Okay, I think we can get started. So, a very warm welcome to everybody for joining us today on our narrative showcase, Dementia Stories for Impact. So, this is a webinar that we're hosting with the Alzheimer's Association's International Society to Advance Alzheimer's Research and Treatment. We call it ISTART, and also in collaboration, of course, with our partners, the Global Brain Health Institute, or GBHI. My name is Oz Ismail. I'm the Director of Scientific Programs at the Alzheimer's Association, and I oversee iStart and all of its initiatives. And I'm delighted to be joined by several wonderful speakers, authors, and scientists today. So we'll be hearing in detail about them and the books that we're going to discuss in today's webinar. So first, we will be hearing from two authors of a book, Dr. Bruce Miller and Professor Cindy Weinstein, who co-wrote the book Finding the Right Words. And then we'll hear from artist Luis Martinez, who wrote the children's book in English and Spanish. It's called Pippo, Don't Forget Me. The format of this webinar is that it will be, we'll hear some readings from these authors, and then there'll be a Q&A with the audience. But before that, we'll have a conversation between the three authors and our co-moderator. Our co-moderator is Fionnuala Sweeney, who is a trained journalist and broadcaster from Ireland, former anchor and correspondent with the CNN International as well. Fionnuala is a multimedia editor with the Atlantic Institute based at the Rhodes Trust in Oxford. Finally, Fionnuala is a member of the founding cohort of the Atlantic Fellows for Equity in Brain Health program with the Global Brain Health Institute, GBHI. She created the podcast series Dementia is Global and brings a lived experience perspective. And so Fionnuala will be moderating the conversation with our authors today, and then we will go on to our Q&A at the end. So with that, it's my pleasure to pass to our moderator, Fionnuala Sweeney.
Thank you very much, Oz. And it's wonderful to be here. And yes, I have some lived experience. My father had Alzheimer's, and if I knew then what I know now, I think his lived experience of having the disease and living with the disease might have been somewhat better. But thanks to the Global Brain Institute and our work, of course, with Alzheimer's Association, I was able to hopefully make his life a lot more comfortable while he was alive. And so particularly looking forward to the conversation today with our guests, Cindy Weinstein, who Oz already mentioned, is going to be talking about her book, about her experiences with her father, who had early onset dementia. So just a little bit more about Cindy. She, like me, is an Atlantic Fellow for Equity in Brain Health, and the book we'll be talking about today is called Finding the Right Words. And she was writing this towards an adult audience. She is someone who really had to cope for several decades with her father, the knowledge of her father having dementia and adapting to it and the impact it had on her and her family and her father, of course, himself. She's also going to be joined by Bruce Miller, who is very well known to those of us who are Atlantic Fellows for Equity in Brain Health. And of course, in the United States, is a well-known neurologist. He's the founding director of the Memory and Aging Center at the University of California in San Francisco. And of course, a founding director of the Global Brain Health Institute, houses the Atlantic Fellows for Equity in Health program. And Cindy, I should say, is a professor of English at the Eli and Edith Broad Professor of English at Caltech. And she is from the 2018-2019 cohort of Atlantic Fellows. And I would like to begin, first of all, perhaps by inviting Cindy to read a passage from her book, which she co-wrote, of course, with Bruce Miller. And then we'll also hear from Bruce before we have our discussion. But before Cindy reads the passage she has chosen, I would just invite everybody not only to listen, but please feel free to pop your questions into the chat, and we'll get to them as we continue our discussion with Bruce and Cindy. Cindy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for organizing this, the Alzheimer's Association, the Atlantic Fellows. I'm extremely grateful. So that's a picture of me and my dad when he was in a nursing home many, many moons ago. And the passage I'm going to read is from a chapter on memory. It's the last chapter of the book. My dad was sick for a long time, and it's been a long time since he died. And I've spent the last decades of my life being married, having children, writing books, and trying to go back to the years when my father was losing his mind and figure out how I got through them without throwing myself off a roof. What I did wrong, too much to put in one book. What I did right. Writing him letters several times a week was right. I know this because even if he couldn't read them, he kept them carefully stowed away in a drawer near his bed, as if they were precious things that he really didn't want to lose track of. What I wish I could redo, nothing, everything. And in the process, I have become increasingly unable to disentangle him from his disease. He'd lived, after all, for 50 or so years. I'm not sure when the first symptoms appeared, but I'm sure I don't know the half of it because my mother didn't want to tell me before that. And I had known him for close to a quarter of a century when his mind was intact, before it started to come apart at the seams. Has literature also given me the tools to climb over the wall of a disease that kills memory, not only of the sick person, but in my case, the well one who looked on, to get to the time before the past that I have for a long while defined as starting when my father was diagnosed? Can I get to the other side of that anguished past in order to remember just what I loved so much about him? After all, the depth of love that I have had for my father and the sadness that came from losing him can be captured fully only if I can retrieve my healthy father, to make you, the reader, know who he was before he was sick. I shall try to do that now. Can I do here what I love fiction for doing, create for you, the reader, my father, or more precisely, recreate my memories of him? It should be easier than what novelists do. My dad was real. I'm not creating someone in memories of them ex nihilo. At the end of Walt Whitman's poem Song of Myself, which appeared in the 1855 edition of Leaves of Grass, he would revise Leaves of Grass until his death in 1892. Whitman writes this: failing to fetch me at first, keep encouraged. Missing me one place, search another. I stop somewhere waiting for you. I read these words and hear my father calling me, urging me to keep encouraged, coaxing me to continue the search, reminding me that he stopped a long time ago, and I should too, because he's waiting for me. In my mind, he's not angry for failing to fetch him. He understands that I couldn't even try, that it's taken me 30 years to try. The problem is that a wall went up when my dad got Alzheimer's, or I put up a wall, I'm not sure which. But it blocked my view of him. My memories of him when he was healthy started to fade, that he jogged 3 miles every day in Verona Park, proudly wore pale blue leisure suits, tickled me when he came home from work, took me to Welsh Farms for ice cream on the weekends, was impatient with me for grinding the gears on the stick shift car when he was teaching me how to drive. It hurt so much to remember my father before he got sick that psychically it made some weird kind of sense to forget that he ever was healthy. I would like to try to climb up and look over that wall now and get at some more of those memories so you will know Jerry Weinstein, born March 16, 1927, died August 12, 1997. But the fact is that I've always been a lousy climber. My upper body strength has never been good. In PE class at F. Ed Brown Elementary School, when the other kids were able to climb the rope up to the gym ceiling, holding on tight and wriggling their bodies to the top, I watched them, alternating between envy and hope. Maybe this time I could do it, and then tried to imitate them and always failed. A long-standing inability to do the hula hoop stems from the same bodily weakness. I'm pretty sure, though, that my upper mind strength is in good enough shape, at least right now, and I'm finally ready to climb to the top and peer over into a different past than the one where my father is losing his mind. Maybe it won't hurt so much now, and even if it does, maybe I'm strong enough to bear it. So let me try to get to where my healthy, loving dad is. And now Bruce is going to read an excerpt from the chapter on memory. Bruce? Not sure where Bruce is.
Sorry, can you hear?
There you are.
Yeah, to be heard, you have to turn the audio on. I've just learned that this morning. Okay. Just a few thoughts before I read. writing this book with Cindy was an extraordinary opportunity. She was very generous and really, helped me to rethink all the diseases that I study. The last chapter that we worked on together was the one on memory, and you've heard some of Cindy's memories about her wonderful father. Um, and I wrote this chapter with some trepidation. I'm not a memory researcher. It's not something I'm known for. But I think it elevated my understanding of memory. And as I'll say in just a second, it made me realize how important artists are and have always been for helping us to understand basic cognitive processes like memory. So I don't know, it might be easier if I share my slides or do we want to do it? Can you see my slides?
We can't at the moment, Bruce, but I think if you put them up, here we go. Thank you so much.
Okay, so this was my attempt to, in a very simple way, explain to a lay audience what memory is. Memories are laid down in a stepwise fashion. Remembering begins with an experience, a word, a fact, a number, a song that we encounter, and it activates whatever part of the cerebral cortex that is needed to perceive the input. If we decide to hold that information for longer, the prefrontal cortex, the area that I love, becomes active. This is what is called working memory. We are working to maintain, to hold that specific memory. Simultaneously, the hippocampus becomes involved and binds that entire experience that was laid down across the cortex to a small number of hippocampal cells. What an efficient process. This is what we call encoding. If the experience or word or fact is repeated in an effort to retain the information, we call this consolidation. If that happens, it is more likely to remain, allowing it to be recalled at a later time. Two factors influence whether or not we remember. The intensity of the stimulus. For many of us, 9/11 was a memory that we still hold. It was very intense. And the effort that we put into re-experiencing or consolidating that event. And I think since I wrote this, we've learned that that effort goes on subconsciously when we're in deep sleep. Finally, after a period of time, some memories become strongly ingrained. The term that we use for these long-held memories is remote memories. Remote memories can be an experience, which is recalled exactly as we experience that moment, or as a fact, which we call semantic memory. I go on in the chapter talk about how little we understand about remote memory, and then I made a little tribute to my mom, and she was an artist, and she died soon after we wrote the book, at almost 95, a beautiful life. And here is my own version of translating memory into a tribute. The picture on the back of the book is titled "The Life and Death of Billy Miller," and it is a watercolor from my mother, Harriet Bernice Sanders Miller, MFA. Mom, soon to be 94, is an artist and an art educator who loves children and dogs. This picture is her dedication to an incredible blue merle Australian shepherd named Billy, who lived with her and my father on the ocean in San Pedro, California. The picture frames, and I'll show you it in just a second, through multiple squares, Billy's life. There are three main themes. The first squares are mystical and present Billy's birth and origins. The second set of squares show palm trees that Mom, Dad, and Billy walked by every day during their time together living on the ocean. And the last squares represent Billy's death and his rise into the universe. thousands and thousands of experiences are abstracted into the frames, which represent a life of a very special dog shared together with my, I would say, very special parents. And so here's a picture, and the first parts of it are the birth of Billy. Then you start to see the palm trees. And these palm trees are very abstracted. I don't think they represent a specific moment or time when my mom and dad were in the almost forest-like walk that they took. And then the end, the little bits of white are Billy rising into the universe. The perfect picture, profoundly beautiful and sad for me, captures the brief moments of our lives, remembered and crystallized into squares, into little semantic pieces. And I will say, our neuroscience does not understand in any way that process of summarizing experiences into little squares. We have a lot of work to do, and artists will teach us how to go forward. Thank you.
No, thank you for sharing. And I think I want to ask you first, if I may, Bruce, and then come to Cindy, the challenge or the joys or both of writing about a parent, particularly if that parent is living with Alzheimer's.
Yeah. I think that this has evolved quite a bit, and I'll defer to Cindy. And I think when I started in the field, it was a shame. It was something that people hid. It was something that I think caused enormous distress. I think many people focused on the negatives, the losses. But I think we are evolving as a community. And I think I'll speak as a physician. I think we cherish now the moments with our parents with Alzheimer's and related disorders. We cherish the humanity, the beautiful things that they do, and can separate the memory loss, which is sad, but also something that they live with in quite a beautiful way. So, Cindy, really the expert on this, though, and you too, Fionnuala. Yeah.
I think we all have experiences. I mean, certainly comes a point where perhaps you realize your father isn't your father as you knew him, and that is something to come to terms with. But Cindy, by looking at the hardest memories you wrote, you have been able to find the happiest ones. So was this what you set out to do, or was it a welcome consequence of writing about your dad?
There were many surprises in writing the book. The kernel of writing the book was based on this. My dad got sick, and his primary initial loss was word finding. And that happened at exactly the time that I was studying in graduate school and accumulating words like crazy, and it was that sort of horrible synchronicity that stayed with me, and that I felt like I really needed to work through. And it took me a very long time to find Bruce and to find the time and to, I think, find the strength to be able to go back to that time where I was becoming an expert in words precisely when my dad was losing them. That was the sort of the donnée, as Henry James would say, of the book. And in the course of writing it, I didn't know there was going to be a chapter on diagnosis. I was sitting in this office where I am right now, and I was telling Bruce that in the 70s, like decades before my dad was diagnosed, my mom took him to a hearing doctor. His hearing was fine. And then the doctor said to my mother, "How long have you been married?" And she said, like 30 years. And he said, "Well, he doesn't want to listen to you anymore." That's what the doctor said. And Bruce I saw the light bulb go on in Bruce's head, and he said, okay, that goes in the book. And I had no idea that was going to go in the book. And then it turned out to be the basis for the initial chapter on diagnosis. So there were so many moments like that. I mean, Bruce was just such an incredible listener, such a great writer, such a great literary critic. There were so many epiphanies that I had along the way, both with respect to my dad, and with respect to my relationship with my dad and how I understood it, denied it, tried to cope with it, all of the above.
I mean, you talk in the book about sitting Shiva, obviously, for your dad, and this book was a process of that in a way. But what Bruce probably didn't expect was that he might be doing exactly the same in terms of sitting with you as he contributed to the book. And I'm wondering about that marriage of a civilian, so to speak, with a lived experience of someone living with dementia, with Alzheimer's particularly, not necessarily having the lexicon to describe or the knowledge to describe what's going on with that person, but knowing emotionally and having a vernacular to describe it in everyday life. And what that was like sitting with Bruce and learning about the terminology and learning about what actually was happening. And what was that like for Bruce explaining it to a quote unquote civilian?
Well, I had this intuition, and I think it's related to being a professor at Caltech, where people understand the world not according to Moby Dick and the Scarlet Letter, but like a whole different vocabulary. So I had this intuition that the science might help. And boy, what it did for me was, I mean, I love words, even unhappy words, like early onset Alzheimer's with the logopenic variant. That was the diagnosis Bruce gave me. But man, getting that diagnosis was, oh, wow, that's what was happening.
Mm.
And each new thing I learned about the brain was a kind of window into my father's brain. And what I talk about in the book is how there was this enormous shift that happened, and I was in this hall of mirrors with my grief, and the neurology did what it needed to do and shifted the focus back to my dad, which is where it always belonged. And it was, I mean, it was incredibly intense. It was liberating. It was hard. But it was necessary.
It was necessary. And Bruce, for you, the experience?
Yeah, well, I got into the internal landscape of Cindy's experiences. And the angst, the sadness, the uncertainty, and I think that can't help but make someone more sensitive. I think it was a real gift to me because I think it helped me to fine tune what my work in the clinic is all about. It was just a beautiful, beautiful experience. And and then there was the writing with Cindy where you know she helped me to understand when I might not be clear about something. And, this is a gift forever. I am increasingly clearer, I think, in the way I explained people suffering with this illness, what is going on.
And of course, then this has a ripple effect into the work that you're both doing with the Global Brain Health Institute and our association with Alzheimer's as we try to reduce the stigma and bring it into the lexicon of everyday life so that for people like Cindy and myself, it isn't quite the same journey for most people going forward to have to get inside the scientific knowledge about this, that it becomes part of common parlance or understanding. Cindy, when you were reading that passage earlier, I wondered as you were reading it, you'd obviously been doing a lot of reflection on your experience as you were closing this, and but are our memories of a loved one, particularly someone living with Alzheimer's, ever finite? Have you had an opportunity to reflect on that passage since you wrote it?
That's an interesting question. I mean, when I read it just now, my voice started breaking. When I said the dates that my dad was born and died, and I guess I think about the finite quality as not finite at all. That every time I read it, I remember. And I've thought a lot about grief. That's what I've been spending a great deal of time doing, and doing workshops on grief and the GBHI sort of mantra, the commitment to outreach, the commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. That part of the GBHI experience has completely stayed with me and will forever, as will the grief I have for my dad. Like one thing
Right.
I share with people is you at least for some of us, we never get over it, and that's okay. And so that's not exactly answering your question on target, I realize, but
It's an
it's infinite. It will be forever. Whatever
Okay.
that it is, it will be forever.
And thank you so much, Cindy. Just a very final word to you, Bruce, being so intimately involved in writing this book, but also coming from the perspective of someone who's a founding member of Global Brain Health Institute, working with Alzheimer's, the Memory and Aging Center. What did it teach you, or what did you learn come away from this experience of writing a book on this personal level?
Yeah, well, one thing that I was very grateful to Cindy for is she pushed me a little bit to become a little personal and talk about myself in the book. And so I think it was an educational process for me about the science that I wrote about. But at the same time, it helped me to understand quite a bit better who I am. A section I thought about reading today is my philia for books and reading, which was what I was like as a young boy, and how what a paucity of experiences I would have if I hadn't been involved with these amazing stories about England and Ireland and um, that my grandfather read me, and how that enriched my brain. So I learned a lot about myself in this process, and then and social determinants of health. People who don't get that opportunity to read, oh my gosh, how much do they lose? How much less is their experience of life? I think somewhat.
Well, thank you. It's a perfect moment to leave that. But again, Cindy's book is Finding the Right Words. Cindy and Bruce's book, I should say. But please stay with us. And please, if you are watching us and wish to ask a question, don't hesitate to put it in the chat, and we'll put it to Cindy, Bruce, or our next guest, Luis Martinez, who is an Atlantic Fellow for Equity and Brain Health. He's a neurologist. Hi, originally from Colombia, working currently at the Memory and Aging Center at UCSF on research efforts, patient care, and bilingual community outreach. You're also a visual artist whose works have been exhibited in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we're going to talk to you about your children's book, which you wrote, Pippo, Do Not Forget Me, or Don't Forget Me, I should say correctly. Shall we hear an excerpt?
Thank you so very much, Finella, for this kind introduction, and thank you so much for the invitation. It's truly an honor to be here in this session with Dr. Bruce Miller and Cindy. And first of all, I want to congratulate for the book of Cindy and Dr. Bruce Miller, Finding the Right Words. I have my own copy, and it's wonderful. It's amazing. So talking about my book, is this one is People Don't Forget Me. It's a children's book, and actually I have some slides that I would like to share with you with the illustrations of the book. So I will share my screen. So once again, thank you so much for being here with us today. My book titled People Don't Forget Me, a cute story about little cat adventures helping Miss Sarah recover her memory. And actually, it's my first experience as both as an author and digital illustrator, and it's been a really exciting adventure for me. I wrote the story, I created the characters or the illustrations, the colors, and I've been learning a lot about how the storytelling and art work together when it comes to make a book, write a book. So this is the cover of the book. It's a children's book designed for ages 4 to 9, and it's available in English and in Spanish. And it's featuring 75 pages with colorful illustration, making engaging for our children, for our young readers. It was published in Amazon last year. It's available in Amazon. And the main character is a cat dressed with bow ties and hats. It was in purpose to capture the attention of the kids, right? And in the story, something happened. The cat helps a lady, Miss Sarah, with some memory issues. People is trying to help Miss Sarah to remember some daily activities, such as finding her house keys and keep the track of the doctor's appointments as well. So for this book, I used different illustration programs for the creation of the background, the colors, the characters, and this allowed me to bring really unique and vibrant look to each page for the book. The inspiration came from my participation in the community outreach program events with the Latino cohort, the Leon Lab. So while engaging directly with the community and families, I realized the importance of talking about the concept of dementia and brain health in a personal and relatable way for children. So I wanted to create a story that not only displays dementia, but also highlights the love and connection that remains despite the challenges. So my book has two characters. The first character is People, the cat. So he's the protagonist, is a lovely cat living with Miss Sarah. His favorite color is red. He enjoys playing with his toys and spending time at home. And I was actually inspiring my cat People that you can see in the picture. And the second character is Miss Sarah. The other character, she's a lovely lady who enjoys gardening, going for short walks, baking cookies. And recently something happened. People has noticed that Miss Sarah is not singing the song that she used to sing with him. Also, something happened with the flowers. So Miss Sarah flowers look sad because she had forgotten to water them. So People now is doing his best to help Miss Sarah remember these little things. He understands that despite any memory problem that she may have, Miss Sarah's love for him is always present. So now I will be more than happy to read a short passage of the book. I will show you the illustrations as well. So this excerpt comes near to the end of the book when Miss Sarah is diagnosed with memory issues, and People helps her to engage with physical activities, start a new healthy diet, and other recommendations. So in this part of the book, People is helping Miss Sarah with her memory issues. So I hope you like it. So People was kind and kept Miss Sarah entertained while reminding her to spend time with him. People made sure to keep the new keys in a visible spot and didn't play with them to help Miss Sarah remember where they were. Although Miss Sarah may forget the songs they used to sing together, People always continue singing to make her smile and enjoy the music. People helps Miss Sarah boost her memory by reading, doing crosswords, solving puzzles, and playing fun games. Miss Sarah also used a calendar to stay oriented with date and month. Miss Sarah is also visiting her doctor more frequently and following his advice. Miss Sarah assured People that he will always be in her heart even if she couldn't recall his name, favorite fruits, or favorite songs. People understood that despite any memory problem, Miss Sarah's love was always there. While the mind forgets sometimes, the heart always remembers. Miss Sarah and People happily live in their lovely home downtown near to the ocean. So this is a part of the end of the book. I hope you like it.
It's fantastic. The animations, the drawings are just so beautiful, the illustrations. Can I ask you, first of all, we've heard about Alzheimer's from Cindy and Bruce at the older end of the spectrum and writing about that. Why was it so important for you to write for children at such a young age, from the ages of 4 particularly to 9?
Yes, thank you, Fenella, for your question. Actually, this stemmed from my experience in the community outreach program at UCSF, particularly with the Latino community, with the Leon Lab. So, participating in these community events, discussing the topics about dementia, brain health, So we have seen many parents and grandparents will bring their children along to these activities. So I realized that the kids, they were all the time curious about the topic. They were eager to engage with the conversation, asking about what is brain health, what is dementia. So to address this curiosity, I started writing down some ideas in my notebook. So creating the characters, just writing down some ideas for for a more personal and relatable way to talk about dementia with children. So I drew inspiration from my own life, specifically with my cat. People who passed away last year. So people was playful, curious. He was jumpy. He was jumping all the time and following me and my grandmother. And my grandmother, she always felt pleased with people. She has mild cognitive impairment diagnosis, and she always felt happy with people because people was always with her all the time, right? So actually, in real life, he likes to wear bow ties and clothes and hats. So it was some elements that I put in the book as well. So I took all these elements of people, characters, my grandmother's experiences, and I aimed to create something personal, a narrative that not only informs but also connect about the emotional, in an emotional level with younger public about the realities of dementia. So it was, yeah, it was my motivation for this book.
No, it's an excellent motivation. And can you talk to us a little more about younger people and their ability to absorb uh, potentially, I mean, very serious situations and understand complex situations and bring a kind of innocence and spontaneity and joy to it in a way that perhaps we don't always do as adults. I mean, what were the children that you were thinking of and writing for in your mind, and why was that? Because of the thing I've just described.
Um, Yeah, I was thinking that the children often perceive these changes in the memory with the loved ones with some mix between confusion and concern. So, because their understanding of the world is still developing, right? So they might find it challenging to grasp what changes mean in the loved ones. So, they might feel anxious and afraid and not fully comprehending the reasons behind of these shifts of the memory. So I wanted to highlight, this difference that they have with adults, and highlighting the importance of compassion and communication, as both with children and adults, they navigate the challenges in a different way. And I can say that the perception of the book among children has been fantastic. They are captivated with the colors of the book, with the main character. They're asking me all the time why people is wearing bow ties. And this leads to the to other questions about what's happening with Miss Sarah, why she's forgetting some stuff, what they can do to help her to remember her favorite color, her favorite fruits. So I'm happy that they start like using new words as well, more words more often like the brain health, memories. So actually, during one of the events in the community events, a mother was reading the book with her son, and they were reading together, and he used the story to illustrate how he should treat his grandfather, his abuelito. So she point out like the lovely cat and say like, look, you should help your grandfather. You should be more patient. You should be more spend time with him together, maybe sing more songs and bring him joy. So it was really heartwarming because they connect the story with their family values. And she was inspiring her son to follow the caring and kind spirit of people. So it was a really nice experience.
I have two questions that come to mind. One is related to some of the choices of colors and the purples and the pinks. So, how did you go about choosing the colors? Because obviously, for children, we're obviously thinking of bright colors, but obviously, you need to be thinking about colors related to dementia to communicate what it is you're trying to convey.
Yes, it's a really good question. So I explored different programs for digital illustration, and I was thinking how to capture the attention of the kids. So I use the character of the people, the cat as an animal because I realized that they love cats and animals, dogs. So I use this element and in the personal way as well because people was real and he was with my grandmother. So for the digital illustration, I explored different programs, and at the end, I found the right tools, to create these characters, this cat. I tried changing colors, and I explored with some kids as well to see which color was more appropriate or raise more attention in them. And at the end, I ended up like choosing people with these colorful illustrations and with this storyline as well.
Excellent. And can you tell me as well, what did you learn, if anything, about yourself as you went through this process? Was there anything that surprised you that you hadn't anticipated before you began?
Oh wow, yeah, it's a really interesting question. So writing this book has been a really rewarding experience. I explore how children and adults we perceive the memory in different ways. So I enjoy like doing some researching and looking into studies that highlight these differences. And also I reflect my own memories and how they have changed over the time. And it was interesting to see how children view their experience with their loved ones and in a simple but yet emotional way. So this journey expand my knowledge and helped me to connect with the emotional aspects of dementia. It was really personal because I described some of the symptoms that my grandmother is presenting, right? And also I described the behavior of my cat who was with my grandmother and was supporting her in some way, right? So it's been a really rewarding experience. I also learned how to create a character of a book. I used the different digital illustration programs, how to create the elements, the color, the shapes. So it's been a really good experience.
And that combination as well of your scientific, your neurology background, how much was that able to be brought to bear in a book specifically for children, where conveying this seriousness or what's going on needs to be perhaps more nuanced?
Um, Yeah, I mean, being a doctor and an artist as well, it's been a unique, fulfilling experience. So I'll always try with my medical practice to integrate or incorporate art elements, with for my patients. I participate in different art programs with the seniors in the community centers. And in the medical practice, I have witnessed firsthand the challenges and struggles that the patients face, both physically and emotionally. So I think art allowed me to connect with them in a different level. So I use art as a tool of healing in several ways. So first as a form of expression, whether it's through painting, drawing, and other mediums. Now I have some ideas to distribute the book as a color book, so the children, they will have the opportunity to color the book, and I would like to talk with them more about that and participate and make some art with that. So yeah, it's been a really good combination to use art as a promoting health, as a tool for promote health.
And a final question for me about, for those who are watching, what is the one thing that you would like children to know about people who are living with dementia who in their lives?
Uh, I would like to know that there is something that we can do, something that there is always something that we can do to improve the quality of life of our loved ones. I want them to understand that they can help in a really important way, with compassion, with empathy, with patience. So, for instance, in the book, people is helping Miss Sarah with some small things, right? Singing songs that she used to love to sing, make her smile. So the kids can follow this example, right? And be more empathetic and more caring with their loved ones. So yeah, during the community events, I've been surprised that they are like adopt the idea to be people, be like people and help their grandparents. So it's been like a wonderful experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine, and it's a wonderful book. Well done, and you're a very talented person, obviously, Louise, and Atlantic Fellow for Actuary and Brain Health as well. Also to Cindy and Bruce, thank you. But please stay with us because we have a lot more questions coming into you from those who are participating here in the webinar, watching the webinar along with us. So for that, I'll hand back to Oz. Thank you so much, both of you, all three of you actually, Bruce, Cindy, and Louise.
Yes, I want to echo Fanula's thanks. It was so wonderful to hear from all three of you, and thank you also, Fanula, for moderating those conversations. And I know you're staying with us as well for this next part, where we'll take questions from the audience who are at this webinar. There's some really great questions that are coming in. So I'll kick off with kind of asking all three of you, as you're bringing into this, you're wearing multiple hats, right? As you're bringing this material to us as academics, as people with that lived experience, as researchers, as clinicians. So there must have been a certain amount of balancing that you would have done as you were writing these books. I wonder then, did it change your view, your framing of dementia research as a whole when you started this versus when you came to the end of writing these books? Perhaps I can go to Bruce first, and then we'll hear from Cindy and then Louise.
Yeah, and I touched a little bit on it earlier as I heard the way Cindy experienced her father, his diagnosis, which was just, it's a horror story. If you want to read a horror story, it's the first chapter. It's about, how badly we treated people in the medical profession. It constantly forced me to reflect about how I could do better, how I can take the experiences of caregivers and loved ones and do more. And so I think this in my own work has a number of different areas that I have changed in. One is, my enthusiastic work with Kate Posehn, the Alzheimer's Association, focused around better care for caregivers. So for sure. And it's given me a sense of urgency as well. We want to stop these illnesses early in their course so that memory is that'd be the other thing I'd say is memory is so much part of our joy, our experience. As we're stripped of memories, we lose something so profound. So I think it's our scientists, the Alzheimer's Association. It's our job to stop this loss of memory in elders who have so much to tell us.
Cindy?
I can't really speak to research in dementia. I guess what I would just say, just, off the top of my head, is just how important the power of narrative is. And to what I think is so interesting and kind of bizarre about dementia is, this is the English professor in me talking, is how the disease challenges narrative. And Bruce was talking about the first chapter, diagnosis, and he kept on saying to me, what happened first? Tell me the chronology, because once I know what happened first, I can get a sense of like where the assault on the brain started and the experience of loving someone with dementia. It's almost anti-narrative. It's anti-chronological, in part because it's so overwhelming, and then to sort of sort out what happened first is very hard. And so I guess I think that the lived experience can be helpful if you find a neurologist who has the degree of empathy that Bruce has. And I guess I would also encourage, and I do have opportunities to speak with doctors, physicians, whatever, and gently encourage them as an initial question to ask the family is, like, why are you here? What symptom did you see? And kind of like create an opportunity for the family to express themselves, because the hierarchy and the power distribution and the knowledge is all in the hands of the neurologist, the academic knowledge, but the experiential stuff is in the hands of the family, and the importance of that being valued.
And Louise, perhaps from a neurologist's perspective, but also you talked at length about how you bring your artist's lens as well as your lived experience. Perhaps you can talk a bit about that.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a really interesting question. So, yeah, I mean, with this process of writing the book and with the presentations of the book, I've been reflecting about the fact that I think we can do better, right? We need more materials for young readers, for adults as well. So I think as doctors, we can use all these tools, all these books, for explaining dementia, for instance, to children or for different diverse communities, right, in an appropriate way. So I think it can be beneficial for us as a doctors. It can be beneficial during the family counseling sessions or during the support groups as well. For clinicians, I think it will be beneficial, or it will be good as a conversation starter. For instance, using the children book, the books for children, we can use to start the conversation with them, right? To raise awareness about the dementia among the younger public. And I think you asked about from the research perspective. So I think for researchers, maybe they may find this book or the books useful for a discussion about how literature can be utilized to educate different demographics in different cities. So particularly understanding the social aspects of dementia. So it can provide like some insights about the efficacy of the narratives or books in promoting awareness about dementia.
And I might comment about Luis. He really walks the walk. He takes this unbelievable visual gift. I think that it was given to him by God, and works with elders in a way with art that is so meaningful. And to see this book with all of the gorgeous colors and very moving illustrations. It's a real tool to teach.
Thank you. Thank you so
You
very much.
all, thank you all so much. So literature that you touched on, Luis, that kind of beautifully brings us into our audience question. There's one from Chukwanugo about how literature can serve as a therapeutic tool for individuals coping with grief. And particularly asks if there are specific genres of writing styles that may resonate more deeply with those experiencing loss. And I love this question because, when I think about literature from my scientific perspective, I think about really heavy, papers and journal articles, which we consume for hours on end. So can you talk a little bit about this question around kind of a therapeutic tool and literature? Perhaps we can start with, maybe Cindy, we can start with you.
Sure. Well, I am of the belief that everything you need to know is in Moby Dick. So that would be the first thing I would encourage people to read. It's about grief, it's about loss, it's really funny, it's beautiful. But that's kind of a glib answer. I think memoirs can be really valuable. And when Bruce and I were writing this book, I kind of took it as an assignment, as it were. And, like when you write about Poe or Melville, like you read what other people have written about them. And so I just read as many memoirs as I could get my hands on. And it turned out I just really, really loved the genre. And I think a must read is Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking. I said to Bruce that if we were going to write a book, that's the one that I was aiming to get as close to as possible, like aim for the stars. And so I think memoirs can be incredibly valuable, and they don't have to be about dementia exactly, but just hearing how another person tells the story of their life. I just was, I just immersed myself in that and found it very valuable.
I I might comment, Anugo, good to hear from you. Um, I've been grieving both the loss of my mother and my son, and so it's been a time of great grief for me. And um, in the course of this, I was given a book about grief, and it's great artists writing about grief, and maybe and this I won't spoil the story because you must read it, but it's by Chekhov, and a lot and Chekhov's story is called Misery, and he writes at the top, "To whom shall I tell my grief?" And I think in the course of the story, you understand how important it is for us to tell others, and it's very hard for us to do this, about what we have experienced, and also simultaneously bring back the great joy that person gave us. And I think as we grieve, we think a lot about each and every precious moment that we had with that person. And I think Cindy has said that earlier today. So yeah, I think grieving is a process that we should never do alone. And the great artists have a lot to tell us about their own grieving, whether it's Joan Didion or loss of her daughter and husband, Chekhov. I would urge people to read many of these stories.
And I'd like to kind of springboard from there onto, again, sticking with the types of literature as well and sort of reactions people have to this now. As when you're translating the science into a book like this, I imagine there are certain challenges and certain compromises that you do make. So I wonder then, can we talk a little bit about the reactions to the book that you've had from readers? Because you must attract different types of readers to this kind of material as well. So perhaps starting with Louise, can you talk a little bit about the reaction to your book? And then we'll hear from Bruce and Cindy about finding the right words as well.
Thank you. Yeah, about the reaction with the children has been fantastic. They've been really captivated about the colors of the book. They love the cat, the character. So they asked me about the bow ties and the hats that the cat is wearing in the book. And this has been important because these aspects leads to ask questions and start the conversation about what's happening to Miss Sarah, why she's forgetting some stuff, what's happened to her memory. So yeah, I've been happy that they start like using new words or terms about they are asking about memory, brain health, dementia. So um, it's been amazing, to see how the reactions, the feedback has been really positive, and actually the adults as well. The adults they are asking us about our work at UCSF and the Memory and Aging Center. They're asking us about our research program. So it's been like beneficial for them as well, to know about our work in GBHI. So yeah, the reaction has been really positive.
Bruce, how about yours and Cindy's books? We'll hear from both of you.
Well, I don't, all the people that love me tell me it's a great book. So, I don't trust a word they say. But, so I think sometimes you have to, think internally about, the quality and, what you accomplished and what you didn't. And, I just feel very lucky to have been able to write the book.
Cindy, perhaps some closing thoughts from you as we are now coming to the end of our webinar.
Sure. It's been incredibly gratifying to get emails from people just completely out of the blue, saying, I read your book. Thanks for putting into words what I was experiencing. Thank you for bringing Bruce to my attention. Like, there's no way I could have gotten to UCSF and gotten that knowledge. So thank you for that. And I think, and this goes for Luis's book as well. Like, I think the things that we've all written are specific to an experience of dementia, but also kind of go beyond that. So when Louise was talking about sort of, grandchildren and children talking to one another and how to be kind and compassionate, like you don't have to have dementia for that to work, and you don't have to have dementia to learn how important it is to find a doctor who listens to you and who is empathic. And sort of the value of integrating the arts and humanities with the sciences, So on the one hand, I think the books are very specific and particular to a kind of experience, but like all books that work, they also have the capacity to transcend that. And Louise's book clearly does that in just such a magical way. And the feedback that I've gotten from readers of my book and Bruce's suggests that maybe we've accomplished that as well.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to all of you about your books and hearing how you brought these different perspectives as well. Thank you, Fionnuala, for moderating such a beautiful conversation with our authors as well today. Just a reminder, there is a quick form in the chat. We'd love for you to fill that out if you attend today's webinar so we can hear from you as well. But I'd like to also share my gratitude to the Global Brain Health Institute for co-hosting this webinar with us today, and also, for our colleagues at the Alzheimer's Association as well. Just as a reminder, we do have in iStart a partnering with research participants professional interest area that kind of looks to help researchers better partner with participants as well as we think about research more holistically and from the perspective of lived experiences. So do go onto iStart and check that out as well. But that's the end of our time today. Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you once again to our moderators and authors, and we'll see you all very soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye.